Shavkat Rakhmonov is everything Khamzat Chimaev was supposed to be. There was a prophecy foretold that there would be a boogeyman in the welterweight division that everyone would avoid. He was going to be Russian-speaking but Muslim. He was going to be undefeated, violent, and finish all his fights. And most importantly, he was going to be a true threat to the welterweight champion. And just when we thought it was going to be Khamzat Chimaev with his inactivity and move to 185, quietly but surely, that role was going to be filled by Shavkat Rakhmonov, and really it was supposed to be Shavkat all along. With Khamzat Chimaev's upcoming fight with Robert Whittaker, though he is the favorite on paper, many fans question whether or not he can keep up with the 5-round veteran in Robert Whittaker, especially after his lackluster performance in the latter half of his 3-round fight with Kamaru Usman. Meanwhile, everyone is just waiting for Belal Muhammad to get out of the way so that we can finally see Shavkat get his chance at the belt and face Leon Edwards, which should be an amazingly close fight. Additionally, with JDM's call out of Shavkat and Shavkat's super cold ass response, many people now recognize Shavkat as the true boogeyman of the division. So how did Khamzat Chimaev go from the boogeyman of the division to one of the most clowned on fighters in another division and someone who has lost the hype he once had? And most importantly, how did we not see Shavkat's rise in the first place, or at least why wasn't he as hyped as Khamzat? So I did a video on Khamzat's hype and how it has declined in the past couple of years or so, but in this video in particular, I wanted to compare the career trajectories of both fighters and more so explore Shavkat's career and how he quietly became the true boogeyman of the welterweight division. Both guys made their UFC debut in the same year of 2020, and of course, both guys would explode onto the UFC scene. Khamzat started slightly earlier in July of 2020 and actually got off 2 fights in the same month, literally 10 days away from each other. It would start off with his Darce over John Phillips, and then a first-round barrage over Rice McKee, where his opponent didn't land a single punch. Then 2 months later, Khamzat would get another quick win, and quick is an understatement here as he brutally knocked out Gerald Meerschaert in 17 seconds with literally the first punch he landed. Meanwhile, a couple months after, in October of 2020, Shavkat would also get a quick finish in his debut, though not as quick, but towards the end of the first round, Shavkat grabbed this guillotine out of pure strength in the clinch with Alex Oliveira. The next year, we would only see one fight out of both fighters, but Khamzat's fight would definitely steal the show. Shavkat would fight first in this year against Michel Prazeres, who is 5'6" at welterweight, by the way, Jesus Christ, and would starch him with a crushing knee to the head and punish him on the ground with some ground and pound before Prazeres would ultimately get caught by a rear naked choke. Back to Khamzat, he would have his breakout fight to the masses as he jumped out of the gate with Li Jingliang, immediately got this fight to his world and attacked his own rear naked choke as well as putting the leech to sleep. Additionally, he would have an equally exciting post-fight interview where he vowed to kill everyone and screamed at the top of his lungs. By this point, I think the hype of Khamzat was through the roof just a year into his UFC career, while Shavkat was relatively unknown outside of the hardcore fans. However, 2022 would be a big year for both fighters, for better or for worse. Both guys would have 2 big fights for their career. Starting off this year, Khamzat would have a huge step up in competition when he faced Gilbert Burns, who had relatively recently fought for the belt against Kamaru Usman. And everyone has seen this fight by now multiple times, but we would first see Khamzat in a war as he traded blows with Gilbert and got hurt and dropped himself for the first time. But ultimately, Khamzat would of course win this very close fight and become a top-ranked welterweight, getting one step closer to the belt. Meanwhile, Shavkat had amazing performances that went under the radar relative to the commercial success Khamzat was having this year. He would begin this year with a sick spinning head kick over Carlston Harris that dropped him bad and led to Shavkat mauling him on the ground. Additionally, Shavkat would have then a big step up in competition when he faced welterweight veteran Neil Magny, and despite the toughness of Neil Magny, Shavkat would win the grappling exchanges and get the guillotine, adding to his finish streak. Back to Khamzat, he would have another big moment in his career, this time for worse, as in the build-up to his fight with Nate Diaz, Khamzat would miss weight by 7.5 pounds, which would force a last-minute shuffle of this card and have Khamzat facing Kevin Holland. And this one didn't last long. Khamzat came out the gate strong with his grappling, took this to the ground, and found his signature Darce. And despite such a dominant win, the weight miss took a toll on Khamzat's likability, and many raised questions of where he was going to fight next. In this time, Khamzat would take a massive layoff of over a year. So with Khamzat out of the picture in welterweight, Shavkat now had the opportunity to take over the boogeyman role in the division. Going into 2023, we'd see Shavkat have two more amazing performances. First, we'd see Shavkat in a dogfight early with another welterweight veteran in Jeff Neal, and though Neal had his moments, especially with the boxing, Shavkat would eventually grab Neal and force another submission, this time a rear naked choke standing up. Then ending the year, Shavkat would face welterweight star Stephen Thompson and nullify any of Wonderboy's legendary striking with his elite grappling, and of course would attack and eventually get the rear naked choke. The end of 2023 would also see Khamzat fight again, this time at middleweight though against a former welterweight champion in Kamaru Usman. And despite a dominant first round that was easily a 10-8 and led to an eventual win, Khamzat's gas tank looked very compromised as he slowed down his pace immensely in those last two rounds and definitely gave up one as Kamaru pushed the pace. If the Gilbert Burns fight didn't do it, this fight with Kamaru definitely humanized the once unstoppable monster and drastically dropped the hype for Khamzat. And speaking of hype, looking at the rise and fall in terms of hype for both these fighters are very interesting. Khamzat's hype rose so greatly in such a short period of time and dropped as quick as it rose. Khamzat's exponential rise can really be attributed to not only his fast finishes and dominant skills in the octagon, but definitely his explosive personality on the mic. He had a lot of quotables, and that evil Khabib personality was something everyone wanted to watch. Someone said on the internet that when Khabib retired, he split into two entities, his good side to Islam and his chaotic side to Khamzat, and that's a perfect description of the character he fulfilled for fans, especially after Khabib's retirement. On the flip side, even though Shavkat was also getting electric finishes, at the same time Khamzat was rising as a star, because Shavkat was pretty quiet and frankly didn't speak English, without iconic moments on the mic, it's easy to see why Khamzat took the shine away from Shavkat. But when we talk about hype and likability, we also have to talk about fight frequency, which is definitely directly correlated to the rise and fall of hype for both fighters. Khamzat's high fight frequency early in his career, in addition to his fast finishes, was huge in getting his hype through the roof early, and conversely, with his fight frequency dropping drastically after the Kevin Holland fight, so too did his hype drop as well. Meanwhile, Shavkat was a tortoise in this race and was steady and continued to fight once or twice a year. He was consistently adding onto his unprecedented finish streak and was fighting just enough to stay relevant and grow his stock. And with Khamzat out of the picture at welterweight, this made room for Shavkat to take his place. It's crazy how much hype can get you. Both guys started at around the same time, were both monsters in the division, undefeated and got amazing finishes, but one guy was electric on the mic and the other was a silent killer. And one of the unique things about the UFC is that they're both the promotion and the matchmakers. They can and will make the biggest fights possible, and though both were doing similar things in the welterweight division in the beginning of their careers, one guy was set on the fast track for bigger fights and stardom, while the other continued to consistently get amazing finishes until eventually true skill shined above all else, and now more fans recognize the true killer in the division. Now with Khamzat out of 170, I'm glad Shavkat Rakhmonov is finally getting the recognition he deserves amongst the greater UFC audience and is looking like a true threat to Leon Edwards. But what do you guys think about Shavkat Rakhmonov? Is he finally getting the attention he deserves, and is he a threat to Leon Edwards? Conversely, what do you guys think about Khamzat Chimaev? Is he a boogeyman at 185, and is he going to get the belt first before Shavkat? I'd like to hear you guys' thoughts in the comment section below, and again, thank you guys for watching. Peace.